Hello, hello. Let's go ahead and get started. I hope you have read the instructions and have your pencil and paper ready to go. Hopefully, you have an outline done. It makes it a lot easier to follow along. So, let's go ahead and get right into it, starting with this beautiful brown ochre color, 10% here in the Caran d'Ache Luminance. So for this head here, yes, it does look like it has a weird angle, so I did round it out just a little bit throughout this whole portrait here, but I really wanted to make it look more natural because this angle with this chick kind of was just a little bit warped, so I did round it out a little bit. But this is just your first layer. You do want to make sure you can have your pencil sharp for this, or it could be a little bit dull. Doesn't really matter too much, at least for the first couple of layers, because really you're just getting down a base layer, not so much about the details. So you really want to use light pressure for this area, because this is just about getting the color down. You're not really worried about anything else but getting this color down. Once you've got a good first layer down, let's go ahead and use the brown ochre 50%. I know you can't see it on this one, it's so old, but it is brown ochre 50%. And we're just gonna start getting in a little bit of the tufts of a little bit of feathers going on here, and try to draw in the same direction as the reference image as much as possible. It does matter quite a lot because that's what really makes the portrait look realistic, is adding multiple layers of different colors as well as drawing in the same direction as the fur, feathers, whatever it is that you see there. So just follow along on this part. You're really not applying too much pressure, but just enough that the color does start to go down a little bit more. So we're going to use black here for the eye. Usually I do start out with the eye first, but I kind of wanted to get a first layer in before I really got into that eye. Now, as you can see, it does have more of an egg shape rather than a round shape like the outline that I did. So pay attention to the actual shape of it and not so much of your outline. The outline is really just more a guideline than a strict line to follow. Now that the eye is pretty much done, no, there's not a lot of detail to it, but that's okay because you can always add detail later. Let's go ahead and start to add some more layers using different colors. There's not a lot of this kind of yellow in the portrait, but you can kind of see a hint of that bismuth yellow that's like very bright and vibrant. So I'm just going to apply it in some of the areas around the eye, a little bit in the head, but not necessarily everywhere. It's just a light layer first. Now using the burnt ochre, let's go ahead and start to add a little bit of the details in the shading. So you can see there's a little bit of this it's like a burnt orange color, and it kind of goes right where the crown of the head is, close to the nose and eyes, and then it kind of just goes up. And really it's just more of getting that color in, less about the details because we're not quite ready for the details. Now let's use Beaster and get some color in there. Let's add some brown. It's more like a orangey brown tint. So draw in the same direction clearly, and then don't really apply too much pressure still. We're just trying to get a little bit of the texture down, but not quite the details. There is a pretty big difference between just getting the color down, the texture down, or the details. And right now we're working on the texture. So you can kind of see that there is a little bit of this darker brown area on the back side of the eye. So I'm going to focus on that for a minute and kind of just draw out this color here. And still, once again, not focusing on the details. Alright, so now that we've got some texture going on, let's use the brown ochre 10% and start to kind of do a burnishing method. So if you're not familiar with burnishing, it's pretty much a method of applying a heavier pressure to blend some of these areas out. And I'm not using too much of a heavy pressure, but it really just about a medium to heavier pressure, just to get everything blended out. You can use lighter colors or you can use a white color to do so, but do keep in mind it will lighten it up So I do recommend something that's going to be closer in color than, an opposite colors, opposite tone, like warm or cool tones. If you think that side has like a cooler tone to it, then you can definitely use a light blue or something. But for something like this here, there's a lot of warm tones. So I'm using a warmer, lighter color for that. Let's go back to the Beaster now that we have a good solid few layers down and you don't see nearly as much of the tooth or the paper. We use this color and start to really add some more texture so that we can get into the details afterwards. So you do want to draw in the same direction. You can kind of see that the tufts of fur kind of looks funky at the top of the head, so we're going to apply some of that in the same direction a little bit, and then work our way with other colors as well. Okay, now I'm going to use a burnt umber. Now, if you don't have any of these colors, I do recommend just finding the closest color that you can to it. All of that is referenced in the instructions. So if you can look at the color and just match it as best as possible, you'll be just fine. So this dark brown here does have some warmer brown in it. So kind of wanted to apply this just to add a sense of depth, because you don't want to just keep applying a bunch of lighter colors. It's not going to be very pigmented enough if you don't apply darker colors. Okay, so now I'm going to use Buff Titanium. Now, it looks like a white color, and it really is close to it, but it's a very, very, very pale yellow color. If you don't have this, you can use a white instead. That's perfectly fine. But I really wanted to use this pale yellow because it does kind of match the rest of the yellow tones without washing it away too much. But it really is just to get a little bit more of a smoother texture going on. Alright, so now with the orange here, we can start to apply a little bit more of those orange tones. This is super fun. I love getting to do the details. It's, the first couple layers aren't as fun and can be quite intimidating because you just don't really know whether it's going to turn out really well or not. But if you just keep going and start applying a bunch of layers, it's really going to make a big difference. And even if you think you have a lot of layers, do it again. Keep going. I would be careful though, because some paper doesn't always allow you to apply a lot of layers. But if you have the right kind of paper, then you'll be just fine for applying a load of layers. So right now we're just going to kind of add some more details, darken up some of these features. So just follow along here. Okay, so this tool here is called a slice tool. You can get it on pretty much online anywhere. It's on Amazon. They also have their own website, but it is a really nice tool to have. What it does is it kind of etches away some of those layers to create a little bit of some scratchy details. You don't want to always use it because sometimes it does look a little bit too unnaturally scratchy, but for this instance it does look like it suits it pretty well because of the way that the fur, the angle of the fur and everything goes. It just works really well, but you don't have to use that if you don't have it. And then let's just move on to the rest of the bird here. Alright, bismuth yellow for the beak here. Now definitely apply a very light color. You wouldn't think to use the yellow in this beak, but it does help as a base color for it. And then brown ochre is actually going to tone it down a little bit, so let's use that in the beak area as well. So let's use a little bit of burnt ochre just to get a little bit of some orange that's underneath the beak. You can kind of see that peachy orange color, but once you blend it in with the other colors, it starts to turn a little bit more of that peach color. Beaster is a great color to be using. It's just a nice light orangey brown that kind of helps to darken up some of these areas and incorporate just a little bit of brown in the orange tones. Alright, so I'm going to use a warm gray to start to add some shading in here. It does look like there's not really a lot of detail just yet, so I'm going to add that. Now, the grays are really beneficial because it's not a black and it's not really a brown. It's just a warmer gray that just helps to incorporate some of the shaded areas. Okay, let's get back to the head here. Now I know it may look like it is very different from the reference image, but I'm really not. I preach this a lot, is I'm not a photorealistic artist. I'm just more of a realistic artist, but with my own interpretation in a way. So I did round out the head a little bit more because it just seemed a little bit weird the way that this head was, and I wanted it to look more natural. So I rounded it out, and now it's time to add the texture. Now it's time to burnish using a lighter color. You can use white if you don't have buff titanium, just to get some of the texture get rid of the texture. And then you can start to add more details on top. So the tooth of the paper that shows through can be quite annoying when you're trying to add a lot of detail. So when you apply a bunch of pressure with something like this with a lighter color, it starts to just kind of blend everything together and almost gets rid of that textured look. All right, let's have some fun. So let's use the burnt umber and start to add some detail. So drawing in the same direction, of course, we want to start to add some short strokes that are nice and sharp. So keep your pencil sharp for this part and just kind of start to have fun with it and go around the head a little bit. Just to add a little bit of some red tones, we're going to use the Burnt Umber and Faber-Castell and just apply it here and there a little bit, but not really not too much. You don't want it to be too red. Okay, so let's have some fun with the slice tool. Now we're not going to apply too much, but I do want to get some highlights in there because it is starting to kind of blend together. If you don't have this, you can use a white pencil and just keep it very, very sharp and carefully apply some shorter strokes here and there. Just make it look like stray hairs, really. Now it's time for the body. And if you look at this body here, you could see that it is totally different color than the top of the head. So what we're going to do is apply pretty much just similar colors, just in a different way. So this first layer is just going to be trying to draw, in the same direction as much as possible, but definitely don't worry about the details all too much. So let's use a different color, Primrose. This is a very light yellow color, and I think it works really great here because it does have a yellow but not as dark as the top of the head. So I'm going to apply that and do a little bit of burnishing with it at other times, but really just going to kind of use it right around the outside and a little bit towards the middle. And don't forget to pay attention to the direction of the little bits of feathers. I always say fur just because I normally draw fur, but this is technically the beginning of feathers. I don't know actually, but they're supposed to have feathers. So pay attention to the direction there. And yes, there's like this little bit of a flower or something that's on the bird, but I just pretty much ignored that and just pretended like it was a part of the bird, or just wasn't there at all really, and just adding a little bit of some shading underneath because that's kind of where the wing is supposed to be, so it's a little bit of an outline of the wing there. So this is a lighter warm gray, and it kind of has a little bit of this greener tone to it if you really think about it. I've used quite a lot of colors now, so I kind of know what this looks like when applied, and it does kind of tone it down a little bit, which is really nice. So I'm using this just a tiny bit here and just trying to really blend the midtones and the shadows into the highlights. So this is kind of more of a mid-tone color that I'm applying here. I am going to darken it a little bit using this darker warm gray color. You wouldn't think to be using warm grays in this, but I do think it really helps to incorporate some of that shading. Okay, so you know how I was talking about warm and cool tones? I'm going to use a little of this cool tone here. This is a silver gray color. And just apply it in some of the highlighted areas because there is a little bit of cool tones. If you really look at it and you kind of know colors a little bit more, you can see a little bit of cool tones in the highlights. So that's what I'm applying here, just a tiny bit. I know you can't see a huge difference, but it really does help to make it look more realistic when you add that. And then with a burnt sienna 10%, which is pretty much a light pink color, there is quite a lot of this pinky tone in there. So I'm going to use this, and it is dull because I'm not applying detail, I'm just applying the color itself. Just kind of using a little bit of a circular motion to apply this color. Okay, so from here on out, just pretty much follow the same method with the texture and applying a little bit of different colors in there. So just follow along, and I will be right back towards the end of the body here. Okay, so the burnishing part with the primrose, that is a really good example for burnishing because it is a light yellow color. And then once we're done with that, we'll get to move on to the little leg that is below. This leg has a lot of similar colors, so I'm just using this light creamy color as the base layer. And I know you can't see the whole details of the leg, but just pretend like it is, already filled out and not underneath all the grass. So just going to apply this all the way out. Now it's time to work on the shading, so use a burnt ochre and just start to kind of apply a little bit of the shading, and you can see that it is shaded between the front and that back leg there, so focus in on that as well. So we'll use the warm gray to kind of incorporate that and make it look like that front little talon there is in front, if that makes sense. And then adding the little bits of texture where those little lines, super, super important, but you don't have to draw it exactly like you see it. It's just for fun, and because it's such a small portrait, really don't have to hone in on too much of the details. right, so this is pretty much done. We're just trying to get some of this orange tone back in there, and then we'll move on to the bunny. Now we'll go back over to the other leg once the bunny's done, because it does make it a little bit easier to, at least for like proportion reasons, to know where it's at once that bunny is complete. So we'll move on to the bunny for now.